thrown out by her family with nothing. She woke up in the Mafia boss's mansion. A true story. Layla Reyes came home on a Tuesday evening the same way she always did, tired, quiet, and carrying the smell of the coffee shop where she had worked her second shift of the day. She was 24 years old. She had been working since she was 16. She had never once asked her family for money. But none of that mattered on the night her mother decided she was no longer welcome. The front gate was locked. That was the first strange thing. Layla fished for her key, but before she could use it, she saw them. 3 black garbage bags sitting outside the gate, tied neatly at the top. Her heart dropped before her mind understood why. She walked closer. Through the thin plastic, she could see the shape of her books, her folded clothes, the small photo frame she kept on her bedside table. Those were her things. She pressed the intercom button. Once. Twice. On the third press, her mother's voice came through, flat and without feeling. "You cannot come inside, Layla. Not tonight. Not anymore." Layla stood very still. The street behind her was quiet. A dog barked somewhere far away. She pressed the button again and asked, as calmly as she could, what she had done. Her mother's answer was short. Her brother Marco had borrowed money from his employer, a large amount, and when the company began investigating, Marco had placed Layla's name on the documents. Bank transfers, receipts, authorization letters. All signed with her name. All forged. The company had already contacted the police. The family had already given their statement. In that statement, Layla was responsible for everything. "Marco is our son," her mother said through the intercom, as though that explained everything. As though it settled the matter completely. "We cannot lose him." The intercom went silent. Layla did not shout. She did not bang on the gate. She picked up her 3 garbage bags, one in each hand and one under her arm, and she walked away. She had 200 pesos in her wallet, a dead phone battery, and nowhere to go. She walked for a long time. The city was not kind at night to a young woman walking alone with everything she owned in garbage bags. She ignored the looks. She kept moving because stopping felt more dangerous than exhaustion. By the time she reached the highway overpass near the edge of Tagaytay, her arms were shaking and her vision was beginning to blur. She had been awake for 19 hours. Her body had simply reached its limit. She sat down on a bench near the overpass. The night air was cold and damp. She set her bags at her feet and told herself she would rest for just a few minutes, then figure out what to do next. She did not get up again. Her eyes closed on their own, and she was gone. The first thing Layla noticed when she woke up was the ceiling. It was white, not the dull white of hospital walls, but a rich, smooth white with delicate plaster work around the edges, like something from a photograph in a magazine she had once flipped through at a salon. A chandelier hung in the center. It was not turned on, but even unlit, it caught the morning light from the window and scattered tiny pieces of gold across the ceiling. She sat up slowly. Every part of her body ached. The bed beneath her was softer than anything she had ever slept on. The room was large, larger than the entire ground floor of her family's house. There was a dark wooden wardrobe against one wall, a small sofa near the window, and a door that was closed. A woman was sitting beside the bed. She was perhaps 50, with silver-streaked hair pulled back neatly, wearing clean white clothes. She introduced herself as Dr. Pilar Santos and explained, without drama, that Layla had been found unconscious on a bench the previous night. She had been treated for a fever and dehydration. She was safe. "Where am I?" Layla asked. "You are a guest in this house," Dr. Pilar said simply. "Someone will explain the rest to you when you are feeling stronger." Before Layla could ask anything more, the door opened. A man stepped inside. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a closely cut beard and the kind of expression that made it clear he was not someone who smiled often. He looked at Layla the way people look at a problem they have not yet decided how to solve. His name, she learned later, was Dante. He was the right hand of the men who owned the house. "You are not a prisoner," he said. "But you will not leave until you are given permission to leave. Those are the rules of this house. Do you understand?" Layla looked at him for a moment. Then she nodded. She had already lost one home that night. She was not in a position to argue about the second one. The house, she came to understand over the next few days, was not a house at all. It was a mansion. 22 rooms, a garden that stretched further than she could see from her window, guards at every entrance, and a silence inside that felt deliberate, as though the building itself had learned to keep secrets. An old woman named Yolanda worked in the kitchen. She was small and round-faced and moved slowly but cooked with remarkable speed. On Layla's second morning, she brought a tray of food to the room without being asked: rice, eggs, sliced tomatoes, hot tea, and stayed to watch Layla eat. "You look like someone who has not been taken care of in a long time," Yolanda said. "I am fine," Layla said. "Yes," said Yolanda. "That is exactly what I mean." Layla did not know what to make of her at first. But Yolanda came back every morning, and gradually, over small conversations across a breakfast tray, she became the first person in that house who felt like a friend. Dr. Pilar was another. She checked on Layla twice a day, answered her medical questions directly, and never spoke about the owner of the house. But she looked at Layla with a quiet steadiness that felt like respect, and that was something. On the fourth day, Layla was summoned. A guard led her down a long corridor and stopped outside a closed door. He knocked twice, then opened it and stepped aside. Layla walked in. The room was a study. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A large desk made of dark wood. And behind the desk, a man. He was perhaps 35 or 36. Dark-haired, well-dressed, with the particular stillness of someone who had learned long ago that he did not need to fill silence with words. He looked up when she entered, and his eyes, dark and very direct, moved across her face once, quickly, the way someone reads a page they have already read before. "Sit down," he said. She sat. "My name is Rafael Moreno," he said. "This is my home. You were found outside on the road 3 nights ago. I stopped because," he paused, just briefly. "It was the right thing to do. Now I need to know who you are." Layla told him. She did not plan to tell him everything, but once she started, she found it hard to stop. The family. The brother. The gate. The garbage bags. The walk. She spoke in a flat, steady voice, and she did not cry, because she had told herself on that bench that she would not cry about this until she had something to cry about that was not simply her own family choosing to remove her from their lives. Raphael listened without moving. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You will stay here," he said. "Until I decide what happens next." It was not a question. It was not exactly an invitation either. But it was something. Over the following 2 weeks, Layla began to understand the shape of the world she had landed in. Rafael Moreno was known publicly as a real estate developer. He was photographed occasionally at events, openings, charity functions, business launches. In those photographs, he looked exactly like what he claimed to be. But the cars that arrived at the mansion at midnight were not real estate clients. The conversations she overheard through walls were not about buildings. And the way Dante spoke to the guards, quietly, with precise instructions, was not the language of a household staff. Dr. Pilar told her plainly one afternoon, after Layla had been watching the compound with careful eyes for long enough that pretending to be unaware would have been insulting to both of them. "The man who owns this house is powerful in ways that are not always legal," Dr. Pilar said. "I am not going to tell you to be afraid of him, because I do not think that would help you. But I am telling you to be careful. And honest. He values honesty more than almost anything else." Layla absorbed this. Then she said, "What happens to people who are not honest with him?" Dr. Pilar looked at her evenly. "They leave," she said. "One way or another." Layla nodded slowly. Then she went back to watching. There was a photograph on the wall near the main staircase. It was the only personal image in the entire house. A young girl, perhaps 15 or 16, laughing at something outside the frame. She had Raphael's dark eyes and a much warmer expression than he ever wore. Every evening, when Raphael passed that photograph on his way upstairs, he slowed for just a moment. Not long enough for anyone who wasn't paying attention to notice. But Layla was always paying attention. She asked Yolanda about it one morning. Yolanda was quiet for a while, turning her cup of tea in her hands. Then she said, "That is Sophia. His younger sister. She was sent away from this family when she was 18. She refused to be part of certain things. Their father decided she was a problem. Raphael was 19. He did not have the strength then to stop what happened. What happened to her? She died 3 years later. Alone. With nothing." Layla set her cup down carefully. She looked at the photograph from across the room. She thought about the bench on the road. She thought about the gate closing in her face. She thought about 3 garbage bags and 200 pesos and 19 hours of being awake. She understood now why a man like Rafael Moreno had stopped his convoy for a stranger. The night Yolanda collapsed, Layla was the only one in the kitchen. She had come down for water, unable to sleep, and found the old woman on the floor near the stove, conscious but confused and pale, her hand pressed against her chest. Layla did not freeze. She had grown up without anyone to call in a crisis, which meant she had learned, early, to be her own first response. She shouted for the guard. She found the medical kit in the cabinet where she had seen Dr. Pilar reach for it 2 weeks before. She kept Yolanda calm, asked her questions, kept her still, held her hand, and talked to her steadily until Dr. Pilar arrived at a run. It was a mild cardiac episode. Yolanda would recover. Raphael had come downstairs at the noise. He stood in the kitchen doorway and watched the final minutes of Layla's steady management of the situation. She did not see him until it was over, when Dr. Pilar had taken charge and the guard was on the phone with the hospital. Raphael looked at her across the kitchen. Then he said, very quietly, "Where did you learn to do that?" She looked back at him without flinching. "When no one comes to help you," she said, "you learn to help yourself." Something shifted in his expression. It was small and it was brief. But Layla had been watching him carefully enough to catch it. The following morning, she found a note slipped under her door. It said only, "Breakfast. 7 o'clock. The terrace." It was the first time Raphael had invited her anywhere. She arrived at 7. He was already there, seated at a small iron table with 2 cups of coffee and a view of the garden that in the early light looked almost peaceful. He did not greet her warmly. He simply gestured to the other chair. They ate mostly in silence. But it was not an uncomfortable silence. It was the kind of silence between 2 people who are beginning, slowly, to trust the space they share. After a while, he said, "Your brother came to the gate 3 days ago." Layla's hand stilled around her cup. "He was looking for you," Raphael continued. "Not out of concern. He needs something from you." "My people sent him away." She nodded once. She did not ask what Marco had said. She had a good enough idea. "I do not want to be protected," she said quietly. "I want the truth to come out. I want what he did documented and placed in front of the right people. I want my name cleared." Raphael looked at her over his coffee. "That can be arranged," he said. She shook her head. "I am not asking for a favor. I am offering a trade." He raised an eyebrow slightly. It was, she had learned, his version of surprise. "I have been in this house for 2 weeks," she said. "I have noticed things. There is someone inside your organization who has been sharing information they should not be sharing. I have watched the patterns. I know where the problem is. I will give you what I know, and in exchange, you use your legal resources, only legal, to present the evidence against my brother to the investigators properly. Not as a threat. As documentation." There was a long silence. A bird moved through the garden below. Raphael set his cup down. "You have been here 2 weeks," he said slowly. "And you found something my people have not found in 4 months. I am very good at noticing things that people do not expect to be noticed," she said. Another silence. Then the smallest change at the corner of his mouth, not quite a smile, but the shape of one beginning. "Tell me what you know," he said. Within 48 hours, Dante and his team had confirmed everything Layla had identified. A mid-level operations manager had been quietly passing information to a rival group through a supplier account that had been deliberately obscured. The evidence was clean and complete. Dante said nothing to Layla directly. But the next time she walked past him in the corridor, he moved to one side to let her through without making her feel like an inconvenience. For Dante, that was almost an apology. Raphael's lawyers, 3 of them, working within proper legal channels, compiled the full documentation of Marco Reyes's fraud within a week. Bank records, original transfers, the correspondence trail Marco had tried to bury under Layla's name. All of it was delivered to the investigating authorities anonymously, but with precision. There was no ambiguity in the file. No missing pieces. Marco was arrested on a Thursday morning. Layla heard about it from Dr. Pilar, who had heard it from Dante. She was sitting in the garden when she received the news, watching a line of ants move through the grass with more discipline than most people she had known. She did not feel happy. She did not feel triumphant. She felt the way a person feels when a window that has been letting in cold air for years is finally, properly closed. Quiet. Still. A little lighter. Her mother called her old phone number once that evening. Layla saw the name on the screen. She set the phone face down on the table and went back to watching the garden. 6 weeks after her arrival, Raphael came to find her in the garden. He sat down in the chair across from her, the same iron chair from the terrace, and told her that everything had been arranged. There was a small apartment in the city, fully prepared. A bank account with enough for her to begin again without immediately needing to work 2 jobs. Letters of recommendation from businesses connected to his legal operations. She had earned them honestly, he said, and she would not leave with nothing. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at the garden. "You're asking me to leave," she said. "I am giving you the ability to leave," he said carefully. "There is a difference." She nodded slowly. "All right," she said. The next morning, Layla said goodbye to Yolanda, who held her hands in both of hers and cried without embarrassment. She said goodbye to Dr. Pilar, who pressed her personal number into Layla's palm and told her to call if she ever needed anything, and meant it. She thanked Dante, who gave her a short nod that contained more warmth than he probably intended. She carried her bags to the front of the mansion. The same 3 garbage bags, now joined by a small zipped bag of proper things, new clothes, a phone charger, a book Yolanda had insisted on giving her. The driver opened the car door. Layla put her bags inside. Then she looked up at the mansion one last time. The study window on the 2nd floor was not empty. She could see the shape of Raphael standing there, looking down. Not moving. Just watching, the way he always watched, carefully, without pretending he wasn't. She stood beside the car for a long moment. Then she picked her bags back up and walked through the front door. She found him in the study, standing near the window. He turned when she came in. She said, "I do not want the apartment. And I do not want the letters of recommendation yet. What I want is a proper arrangement. A written contract. A real role in running the parts of this household and this organization that operate legally. A salary. Clear terms. And the ability to leave whenever I choose, with no debt and no obligations." Raphael looked at her for a very long time. "You walked back in," he said. "You were watching from the window," she replied. Another silence. Outside, a bird moved through the garden. The morning light came through the glass and settled across the floor between them. "Close the door," he said. She did. 1 year later, Layla Reyes had her own office in the Moreno estate. A real office, with her name on the door, not in gold letters or anything dramatic, just printed on a small card in a simple frame. She managed the legal operations of the household with the same quiet precision she had used to notice an information leak in 2 weeks, to keep an old woman calm during a medical emergency, and to negotiate her own terms with a man that most people were afraid to look in the eye. She and Raphael had breakfast on the terrace each morning. It had never been officially decided. It had simply become what they did. He brought the first cup sometimes. She brought it other times. Nobody counted. On the morning that marked exactly 1 year since the convoy had stopped on the highway overpass, Layla walked to the framed photograph on the wall near the stairs. She placed a single white flower against the frame. Not a big gesture. Just a small, quiet one. She heard footsteps behind her. Raphael stood beside her. He looked at the photograph for a long moment, longer than he usually allowed himself to. His jaw was tight, the way it got when he was feeling something he had not yet decided how to name. Layla did not say anything. She did not try to fill the silence with comfort or explanations. She simply stood beside him and let him feel whatever he was feeling, without asking him to manage it or apologize for it. After a long time, he said, very quietly, "Thank you." She looked up at him. His eyes were still on the photograph. "For the flower?" she asked. He shook his head slightly. "For staying," he said. Layla looked back at Sophia's photograph. The young girl was still laughing at something outside the frame, some moment, some joke, some afternoon that had happened long ago and been frozen there. She looked like someone who had deserved a great deal more than she received. "Someone should have stayed for her," Layla said softly. "I am glad someone stayed for you." Raphael did not respond. But he did not walk away either. He stayed exactly where he was, beside her, while the morning light moved through the tall windows and the house held its breath around them. And that, for now, was enough. End.